Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Jacob King, and he's going to tell us about his near-death experience. Where are you, Jacob?
I'm in Melbourne, Australia.
Okay. Beautiful accent.
Thanks.
So
Uh,
feel free to start where you like.
yeah, cool. So I had a lot of PTSD growing up. Had a very traumatic, very violent childhood. And all the typical symptoms associated with that. And I'm one of many people who grew up, sort of using drugs to numb the pain, and things got started getting out of hand. Especially when the lockdowns hit in 2020 here in Melbourne. So yeah, my drug use started to skyrocket quite a bit and started using more and more. And one day in October 2021, I had an OD and had an experience that changed my life forever. So what happened was I found myself in a black void and was very peaceful in this place. There wasn't any vibration of anything. There wasn't any, like, it was perfectly calm, perfectly still. Like, it was a place of nothingness. And I was just there and I was calm. And then before I knew it, there was this energy that came into the room with me. And this energy was very, very beautiful and very, very warm, very soothing, extremely powerful. But the extreme power of this energy was perfectly balanced with the love. But there was so much of all of it that I was very intimidated by the love. And I sort of didn't know whether to be scared or to feel the love. It was almost like I had a choice to make. And I chose to feel the love of it. And when I chose to do that, I sort of melted into it, and there was a sense of familiarity with it all. When I became familiar with it, I sort of realized that, okay, I know this energy from somewhere, but when I scanned through my whole life, I couldn't find this energy anywhere. But somehow I knew it. I knew this energy. So I was able to scan back before my life. And when I scanned back before my life, that's where I found it. And I realized, oh, I spent time with this energy before I was born. This is God's energy. And that was amazing to realize that like God was holding me and hugging me and comforting me. And and when that happened, I was taken out of this void and I was sent into a new dimension. And in this new dimension, it was like a lot like space, with billions and billions of stars everywhere. And the stars were emanating colors that I haven't seen before. And they were so incredibly beautiful. And I was just taking it all in. And as I'm looking at all these stars, which are just filling this place, I realized that these stars were aware that I was looking at them, and they're looking back at me. And there's almost like a vibrational interaction between us as I'm looking at each of them. And then I realized, oh, wait, these aren't stars. These are souls. The souls look like stars. And God was like just like an invisible ball of energy, but he may as well have been visible because it was so powerful. I refer to God as a he, but God transcends gender and everything like that. I just say he because that's what I say naturally. Um, God started to gather these souls together and was sort of creating these beautiful works of art with them. He would just gather them together, and these beautiful pieces of art, they almost look like Buddhist mandalas, but they were changing. All the colors were changing and the dynamics of it. And it was just, it's very hard to describe and even to remember exactly how it looked like. My brain can't even reconstruct how beautiful it was, but it was so beautiful that I felt like I was going to die from the astonishment of what I was seeing. I still felt like I was in a human body there. A lot like when you're in a dream. When you're in a dream, you're still walking around in a human body, sort of thing. Um, and yeah, it was, and this artwork kept changing, and then God would sort of wipe it out and create a new one. And He was creating it with the souls, and it was just like I was struggling to keep it together to handle what I was seeing, and God had a sense of humor at my reaction at how amazed I was, and He was like, "Just kick back and relax. I'm putting on a show for you. I want you to enjoy this." I'm creating this service for you. Just enjoy it without resistance. I was like, oh, I'm trying. It's hard. It's too beautiful. Um, and after this, we started to fly through this space, and I'm flying through past all these souls. And as I'm flying through, I'm absorbing all the love and the beauty in this place. This love, which was just like here, we have air. Over there, the air is love. You can feel it as you're flying through it, you know? And as you're flying through it, it's so dense, it almost feels like you're flying underwater. It's like both of those sensations at the same time, you know? And yeah, it was amazing. We kept picking up speed and going faster and faster. And I'm a bit of a daredevil. Like I enjoy these kind of thrilling experiences, and this is what God was giving me over there. And but it started getting too much. Like I started to get overwhelmed with all the sensation I was experiencing, the sheer amount of love and all the beauty and the speed and the flying. It was too much sensational overload that I started to feel a bit destabilized. And I started to worry a little bit. And just as I started to worry a little bit, like God sensed it, and then we came to a stop. And we stopped in front of a giant tower. Um, this tower looked just like, like a skyscraper you would see in your city, like a rectangular shape, but it was made out of the same dynamic lights as the souls were made out of. And we were right in front of it, and I looked up to the top, and I couldn't see the top of this tower because of how high it was. And I was just, you know, still amazed at everything I'm seeing. And God said, all right, we're going to fly to the top of this tower. And I was like, okay. And so we started flying towards the top, and same thing where the speed is increasing and increasing and increasing. And it starts getting to the point where it's getting too fast. And I'm really feeling like it's not so much the speed of the flight that was freaking me out, but it was the amount of love I was absorbing, which I felt like I was going to burst. Really, I was like, I'm going to die. I could feel everything within me shaking, like about to disintegrate. And I just braced myself for death, basically. And as I braced myself to die, basically, now I got to that point, and then we're at the top of the tower. And I was like, oh, thank God I survived that. And um, I'm at the top of this tower, and I'm looking around, and I walk to the edge of it, and as I look out from the edge of this tower, I can see like billions and trillions of these stars everywhere. And yeah, it's just in a beautiful view, beautiful sight to behold, and I'm just looking out at it and catching my breath, and I feel God's vibration. It was like he was gearing up, like, all right, well, now we're gonna fly through all these lights. And that's when I said, no, hold on. I nearly died coming up this tower. And if I fly through this sea of lights, I'm gonna die for sure. Like there's no way I'll be able to handle that. I'm gonna die. And God said, yes. And I was like, what? What do you mean, yes? I thought he was gonna say, like, no, you'll be all right. Don't worry about it. He said yes. But I took a moment because it wasn't the answer I was expecting, and I thought, okay, God doesn't want me to die. I mean, does he? I mean, God could have killed me, could have snapped his fingers and I would be dead. So, and obviously, God, I can feel God's love, I can feel God's wisdom and God's knowledge and everything. So I trust God with everything. I trust God more than I trust myself. So if he says yes, like there's nothing wrong with it, then I'm gonna do it. That's no worries. Um, so I just said, okay, let's do it. And then God basically picked me up and he threw me off the tower, but it was like throwing a little paper airplane. It was very gentle, and I was just gliding off the top. And we started gliding down into the sea of lights. And at first it was gentle and it was easy. And same as before, I'm flying past each soul and having a brief vibrational interaction with each of them as I fly past them, and absorbing their beauty and their love, and just flying through. And the speed is picking up and increasing and increasing. And I start getting to my breaking point again where I'm starting to feel destabilized, like I'm about to burst. And as I get to this point, I'm secure in the fact that God says, yes, it's okay to get past this point. So I trust it, and I get past that breaking point. And what happened was, as I got past this breaking point, I started to feel the skin on my face starting to peel off. But it felt really good. It felt like taking off a tight shoe. And then, the muscles were coming off and the bones were coming off. And like all these layers of human identification that had remained with me in this place were all starting to peel off one by one. And each layer that came off just felt like taking off another tight shoe. And I realized that all the trauma I had carried within me since childhood, and they were contained within these layers. And so as I was shedding these layers, I felt healed. I felt relieved. And so now there was no fear at all. I was free. I'd conquered the fear of death, and I was just flying and I was having an amazing time. And then I got down to my final layer. I didn't know what this layer was, but I knew it was the last one. And thought, okay, when this final layer dissolves, then I'm done. There's nothing left after this. And oh, well, I guess that's it. It's been a good ride, And I'm flying at the speed of light, and this layer is completely unaffected by the flight. I'm just flying, and nothing's happening. It's not dissolving, this layer. I thought, what is this layer? Why is this layer not dissolving? It's very strange. And then when I thought that, God stopped me from flying, and he picked me up, and I was like, a tiny little grain of sand in his hand. And he showed me what he was looking at from his point of view. And what he was looking at was a little white light. And I felt like this was the light of my soul, And he said to me, no matter what you've gone through or what you will go through, all of this stuff will fade away. But this right here is eternal. You have to remember this. This is who you really are. And then he rolled me out of his hand like rolling a little marble. And I rolled out of his hand and I joined the rest of the sea of lights. And as I joined this sea of lights, like we became like one unified being. And it was a lot like a drop of water joining the ocean. And as the drop of water joins the ocean and becomes one with the ocean, that's exactly what happened to me. I merged with the infinite. And this infinity that I merged with was part of God, It was as much a part of God as, your finger is a part of you, like it was directly part of God. And I was part of it. There was no ego left. There was no sense of human identification. There was no, oh, I'm Jacob and I'm from Australia. None of that. I'd completely forgotten about Earth, completely forgotten about all of this. I was back home. This is where my soul originated from. I knew this. And this was the ultimate longing of the soul, was to be back here. And I was here again. And I was content and I was complete and I needed nothing else. And I lost all sense of time, This was a timeless place. And then God picked me up and it took me back out of that ocean, and I saw this image appear, materialize in front of me. And this image was an image of this human body that I'm back in right here. And it was on Earth and it was passed out or unconscious, whatever it was. And I could feel like God was going to send me back. And I thought, okay, like he's going to send me back. Okay. But I started to think of the human, and I knew that like I was content with being sent back, but at the same time, thinking like a human, I knew that I had to ask questions on behalf of the human, because the human is going to have some questions about this experience. So I said, wait, I need to ask you some questions, God. And I thought like a human again. And I said, all right, God, how am I supposed to go from this back to that? Like, there's too much of a contrast between heaven and earth. I don't know. I don't think I can handle it. How am I supposed to do that? And God said, it's okay. And embedded within the vibration of it's okay, God was saying, I understand you. however you handle it when you get back, it's okay. I accept. What you've done before you came here, I accept. I understand you perfectly. There is no judgment here. And that felt good. I was like, all right, good. But when I get back, I'm going to want to tell everyone about this place. And I started remembering the people on earth who were closest with me. And I thought about my cousins and I thought about my good mates and, people I work with or whatever, like all these people. And I remembered them and I named them one by one. And I said, God, can you send them some of this love I'm experiencing now? So they can believe me about this. And can you send them this love? And God said, well, that's what you're there for. I said, me? How am I supposed to give them this love? Yeah, this love is too much. This love is so incredibly powerful. I couldn't possibly give them this kind of love. And he said, you can ask me for help. You can ask to help become an outlet for this love. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting concept. I'd never thought of that, thinking from the human perspective. I was trying to do everything with my ego by myself, with my willpower and all that. And like you can say, I just have to ask for help and just be an outlet. Like, okay, yeah, all right, I'll do that. But it's so easy to say that from up here. Like when we go back to Earth, like things are so much more confusing and the dense vibration and how slow it is and everything's so confusing. And I know I'm just going to go back to the drugs and I'm going to feel suicidal again. But I don't want to lose touch with you again. And then God said, I am you. And I was like, what? Like, how can you say you are me? You're too powerful to be me. You couldn't possibly be. How? And then it was like time stood still. And out of the center of my forehead is a giant golden eye shot out. And there's giant golden eyes coming out of my forehead and is looking back at me. And I was confused because I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, is this my eye looking at me? Or is this God's eye is looking at me through me? I don't even know what's what anymore. And I'm trying to figure it out like a puzzle. And and then God said, I am viewing your life through you as you. You and I are one. And then he sent me back.
Wow. Wow. What do you do when you come back?
Oh, I'm still trying to figure it out, some of it, but trying to integrate that was very difficult. Um, some of it was good. I mean, the whole thing about being an outlet, that was great. Like I was like, oh, I wish I heard that earlier, that would have made life a lot easier. And that's been a very, very good thing for me to hear. Um, but it was a big, big shift I had to go through because when I got back, it wasn't like, oh, I had no ego. I was hoping that's what would happen. Um, when I got back, I had to deal with the fact that Earth was not the same place for me anymore. Um, I couldn't go from having an experience like that to coming back and enjoying the regular Earth things anymore. Before I enjoyed video games, I enjoyed drugs, I enjoyed women, and all these kind of things. And now, when I was engaging in these things, I was getting no satisfaction out of them. And not only that, everything looked weird, like because everything is so beautiful up there, the colors and just you, you can't comprehend how beautiful it was up there. And now I come here, everything looks so dull. It's like
How long did it feel like you were there?
I don't know how to answer that. The time works different. Either there's no time there, or time just works so differently. Like when it's constructed in my human brain, like I don't understand how long I was there. I was it years? Was it? I don't know. I can't answer that. Um, there's some parts of it I just can't. My human brain is still struggling with it. I know when I was there, I remember when God materialized the image of my human body, and I knew I was going back to it. One of the things I thought was like, he's not going to get it. Like, when I go back to being him, he's never going to understand this place and what it's all about. Like even if he remembers it, and so And now I remember me saying that and it kind of spins my head a little bit, but I get it. Like, oh, even me retelling this experience, I don't really understand it. I can't possibly, the human software cannot deal with this experience really. So I translate it into human terms, but oh, it goes so far beyond anything the human mind can reconstruct, you know? Um, so yeah, I'm still trying to integrate it. It's still very recent. But I'm finally over the toughest part of it because for most of 2022, I was a mess. I was a real mess. Um, I, there was a lot of anguish for not being there anymore and for being here, which is very different being here, you know. Um, here I feel like I'm like a soldier at war, you know, and I miss being home. It's that sort of a thing.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like I've gotten to the point where I feel I'm here to be of service to God, and for me to be of service to God here means being of service to others, those around me. I see everyone here as being a part of God, just as God said, "I am you." Well, that's what I have to say to everybody. I am you. God is you. You know, and I think that for the animals and everyone, and just like when I was in that sort of the cosmic soup, the sea of lights, you know, and I was one with everybody. I the only way I can deal with being here is to recreate that here by being giving and being kind to others. And then there's like a brief connection that I make every time I'm kind with others here. And that that takes the weight off. So I had the only way I could deal with being back here and is is to learn some tough spiritual lessons. Um, and that made my life easier. Not only that, like I don't feel like I have PTSD anymore. You know, I was able to get sober and all that. So it's been really good for me in a lot of ways, but there was a lot of hurdles to jump first. Yeah.
What about when you first came back, the effects from the drug overdose? Was you sick? Was you completely okay? Or
I felt a little sick, but you know, I was okay. I didn't need an ambulance or anything like that. A lot of the time when I was taking that stuff, like I'd be coughing really bad and struggling to breathe, like really really shallow breaths and stuff. So I think it might have been a like a I think they call it respiratory depression, something along those lines. Basically, not enough oxygen. Um, sorry, but yeah. So, but I came back and I was fine. I was all good, really. So yeah.
okay. How did you tell people?
I told a few people early on, but I was I remember like I would tell them just bits and pieces of it just to see how they would react. And most people were either like didn't say much, like because they couldn't understand it, they didn't know about NDEs, or there was a couple of people that were just like, oh, bro, you just took drugs and you had a drug trip and that's all it was. And I wanted that to be true so I could, because if you just take drugs and you come back, like you just go back to normal. But I couldn't go back to normal after that. And so I kept it to myself for for a long time. I It took me nearly a year before I opened up to somebody. I actually had a friend of mine. She's had a few NDEs. Like, her name is Nell. Nell was she was a very very close friend of mine, and I didn't even want to tell her because I don't know why. I just wanted to keep it secret. You know, I was trying to process it, and I would try to talk to her about the symptoms I was experiencing. That I was so angry with God now for not being there anymore, and things like this. I told her everything except the NDE. Um, because I felt shame, a lot of shame when I came back because I thought that having an NDE meant that when you come back, everything's good. You're healed when you get back. But I didn't experience that. I'd say I got a lot worse because I was in so much anguish at not being there anymore. And I was back on drugs and alcohol again. I was like, how can I go from being in heaven and flying around with God and experiencing all that and then coming back here and I'm back on drugs again and I'm depressed and I'm miserable, I'm worse. Like I'm beyond hope. I felt so much shame. And that's I think what made me keep it secret, you know. Not only that, I thought most people are just gonna think I just took drugs and I believed my experience, you know. It was very, very hard but when I finally opened up to her because I couldn't keep it to myself anymore, and Nell spoke to me, she's like, honey, when I had my first NDE, same thing happened to me. I was stuck at home for like 8 months. I could barely eat. It was so hard for me to be back here again. I understand exactly what you're talking about. And that was like a
Good.
huge weight off my shoulders. That helped me heal. So yeah.
So did you go off the drugs then slowly or?
Yeah, yeah. One by one. Like I was on so many different things. And it wasn't just drugs, it was lifestyle things as well. Women and video games, like including that as well. As I had a video game addiction. Basically an addiction to escapism and trying to run away from everything I was feeling inside. And it was a slow, gradual process. But I had to because I wasn't getting any satisfaction out of these things anymore. And I started to get more satisfaction out of helping people and being kind to people, being loving, connecting, feeling the vibration of God within me, which is within all of us. And these are the things that I had to do to heal. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It was gradual, step by step. Um, and because it was gradual, it became quite effortless. I sort of, uh, I'm almost hesitant to say I'm completely sober because I'm drunk on God's love. You know, I really I'm in an altered state of mind all the time off of love, really. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
So what's that feel like when you help someone or you're kind to someone? You said you kind of feel differently.
I always think of that vibrational interaction I have when I fly past each soul. And this is happening with us on Earth all the time, but because we're so lost in our heads, we don't really feel it. But people who are very sensitive, they feel it. Like when you get like psychics and mediums or just very sensitive empaths, they feel the energy off of each person that they go past, right? And this is what's happened to me now. I feel everybody's energy when I walk past them. And I try to make that a more pleasurable experience by being kind, being loving. Sometimes it's not even anything you can see externally. It's not like I'm smiling at everyone or giving them a high five or anything. No, no, I just look like any regular person. But internally, there's like I'm sort of giving them a blessing or something like that internally with my vibration. And I feel like that's really changing things around me. And sometimes that starts to manifest as something big, like, when I'm walking near my house and there are people walking their dogs, and sometimes the dogs will come running up to me, and then the owner is like just smiling at me, and sometimes people are just like, hey man, like, and I can tell they sort of, I don't know if it's normal for them, but it feels like I didn't experience life like that before my NDE. People being really friendly and stuff like that. I was just like, just like everyone else, just keeping to myself, that sort of a thing. Um, so yeah, every time I'm kind and I'm connecting with people, I start to feel like I'm back in that. I call it the cosmic soup or the sea of lights, where I was one with everyone, and being one with everyone is like being one with God. And that is the part that is still that's the part of the NDE that was the most significant to me, where I felt like I was back home again. And sometimes when I'm walking, I remember that, and like I get tears in my eyes, just thinking about that again. And so I can recreate small parts of that just by being kind and loving to others. And that is what gets me through my day. And when I was dealing with the hardcore depression in 22, I remember I was driving once and somebody was really aggressive and cut in front of me really harshly. And in the past, I would have had a road rage with him and got really angry and all of that. But I was so depressed and so miserable. And something made me just go, I don't even care about defending myself anymore. You take the spot. Have a good day, man. And when I did that, it was like depression just lifted off me instantly. And it was amazing. And I was like, what just happened? Like, and I feel like that was God's unseen hand guiding me and showing me like, okay, this is how you're going to deal with things now. And that's when I started to sort of get addicted to being kind and loving to others. And like, oh, like when I do this, it's just everything feels better. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I get it now.
It's making me think of when I was a little girl and starting school, and um, I was so shy that I would wait and see if anybody's going to come talk to me. I was just hoping somebody would come talk to me, somebody come be nice to me. And eventually you learn you can do that. You can go be the one that is kind to someone, go over and try to be friends with someone, that you can do that for a shy person. First I started doing it with other people, I would see look shyer than me, that had less friends than me, more unfortunate than me. And I would always rush and I get to be the one. And it felt so good to be that. But then after a while, you start to learn, well, I can do that with even the bullies or do it with anybody. And they'll change how you interact. Maybe, maybe not. But
Yeah, 100%, and that's like being the outlet, that was a very significant thing, when God said to be the outlet, because I realized that there's an illusion that the love we give to others is our love that we're giving to them, but it's not. And this is the love that flows through the whole universe, the love that we love others with, the love that we love God with, that's God's love, this just flying through. But we have an illusion with our egos that it's our love, or that we can be selfish about our love and who we're going to give it to and who not to. Nah, that's all rubbish,
and
you
who's
know?
worthy of our love?
Yeah, exactly.
I will
Yeah.
love you if you do this and this and this and this. Well, you
Yeah.
did one thing, go away.
Uh, yeah, it's all an illusion. But yeah, and so since I've done that, like, there are people who, like, do bad things to me and stuff now, or whatever. When that happens, I mean, all that stuff still happens. But instead of like closing off the outlet, squeezing the pipe so that nothing flows through, no, I don't do that anymore. It's still, I just leave it open because I know it's not my love anyway. And then I can just deal with whatever they're doing to me. And a lot of the time, people come back around later and they apologize, and they whereas in the past, I would have gotten back at them, try to get even, get my revenge, all this sort of nonsense, all this immature behavior in the past. Now I just keep the love open, and they come back around again.
Well, just like, I thought our appointment was tomorrow at this time because of the time change. I got it mixed up. And then, you're like, are we doing this today? I'm like, oh crap. I'm just leaving the nursing home. And then you're like, can we do this a half hour? Oh, yeah, sure, that's cool. Where some people would be so full of ego. No, like you missed your chance with me. Like I didn't respect them enough to make them important enough to get the time right. There are people
mm,
like that.
mm.
So I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
mean, you go. Sorry.
no, it's just like, it takes all kinds. I mean, we have two ways of being. We can be really rigid, or we can be like, that's beautiful. What you're saying is this is God's love that we can share. It's not ours that we're going to use it all up, or somebody's going to take advantage of us. And
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, I also noticed that, like, I have like sort of an increased perception of all the little things that happen every day, which is really orchestrated in a way that's very magical. Like, say you getting the time mixed up. Like, I knew when I woke up this morning, oh, there's a mix up in the time, and I was like, I can go back to sleep, or no, I'm up at this time for a reason. I got up and then I had time to make coffee and have breakfast, and so I was more prepared for the interview. Whereas and if we did it earlier, I would have been like, like still really tired, half asleep.
it worked
And
out.
I'm noticing, yeah, like everything works out. So in our egos, we want things to work out a certain way. But when I sort of release that expectation, things are working out in a better way than what I could have planned. But I just have to let go of my expectations and sort of just flow with it, flow with the accidents, because the accidents lead to something really cool later on, and the mistakes, whatever labels I want to give them, um, they're there for a reason. So yeah, there's been a big shift in the way I view life. I'm no longer seeing myself as a victim of my circumstances, and don't get me wrong, like the things I experienced in growing up, they were hellacious, horrible things. But there's like an alchemy about it, turning the lead into gold. That's what I feel like. So I've turned my trauma into healing, and that has given me like a lot more strength than I otherwise would have had, a lot more understanding and empathy and things like this that I'm very grateful to have, that I would not have had otherwise. So, and everybody's got some trauma of some kind, like everybody, regardless of where it came from, your parents or from lovers or whatever. Um, and being able to heal that rather than holding on to that. There's a lot of people, just like they hold on to love, they're holding on to their pain. And that's something that I was able to let go of, when I was flying through and all my human layers were being stripped off me. I felt like I went into that place because I was holding on to my human identity with all the trauma and everything. And then how freeing it was to be liberated of that. And now that's kind of the vibration I walk around with, like being you could say like energetically naked, like not holding on to any energies, letting it all just fly off me and just being free. And I don't know, it's some kind of magic that happens when I let go. It's hard to put it into words, but I think this is what a lot of religions and that they talk about, with not having much ego, being humble. Or, in the Bible it says, I think Paul says something like, making myself small so that God is big. Things like this. It's all starting to make sense to me now. It didn't make sense to me before, but now it does. And it's very simple. It's very simple, really, when you start to get it. So I really want to share that with others and help other people to get it because it's easy once you get it, but getting it is not always easy. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we try every way, all the hard ways, and then only the way left is the right way. It's like, oh, okay, I'll try that. And gosh, that
Yeah.
worked. That could
Mm,
have worked all along.
mm,
I have seen in NDE studies that um, they don't know why. The scientists say they don't know why, but it seems that people that's had a traumatic childhood are more likely to have an NDE. And I feel like I know why, I know why, because I feel like God adopts us. That, like, you use the word soldier, like, we're soldiers, and I feel like those of us that's had a lot of hard times are, we end up can feel like a soldier, like we are just muddling through. There's another hit, I'll muddle through that. Oh, there's some more, I'll muddle through that. What seems like other people just seems like they're on easy street and just have everything handed to them, and we just got to fight for everything. Oh, guess what, we're fighting again, we're still fighting. And it's just like struggle, struggle, struggle. And then when we have a near death experience, some kind of trauma, that we just leave our body from the trauma and out of body, and we are given these experiences, it feels like uh, an award, a reward, a rescue, and we finally get to feel that love and protection that we didn't get from our parents.
mm.
And
Yeah,
it feels like we just, like, God has adopted us. Like, looky here, they're really, really trying. Let's give them like a gold star. You got
yeah.
billions of stars.
Yeah, well, and I think Jesus spoke about this stuff quite a bit, when he said like, I think he said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven," and things like this. Or when he said, um, the rich man cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because like the rich man, it's not just like rich with money, but it's rich with like he's all good. He can enjoy the earth, like you said. These people who they seem to be walking on easy street, right? So they can never, they're not craving something more than what the earth has to offer. A lot of people are like this. A lot of celebrities are like this. But whereas a lot of people who have reached out to me since I started sharing my experience, and all of them have had rough experiences, trauma, addiction, things like this, and they're really trying. They're like, help me figure it out. And they're craving something more, and it's a lot like God is like the cosmic parent. And imagine like you're a parent and you've got your child, and your child is lost, and your child is looking for you. Like you're gonna want to help them for sure, but it's a lot like the prodigal son, where we don't remember, but we decided to leave the kingdom to come out and do whatever we're doing out here. And it's only when we get ruined to the point of, like in that story of the prodigal son, like he's on the pig farm and he's eating pig slop. And he's like, all right, that's it. I'm over this. Let me go back home. And then he decides, and then God meets him halfway. And so a lot of these people who are reaching out, they haven't gotten halfway yet, or they're still out there. They're not really done with the world yet. And that happened with me too. When I got back, like I wasn't really done with the world yet, but I already had an experience with God, and it was like, okay, I got to figure this out. I've got to. And Jesus said this too. Jesus said, you have to die to the world, right? And whoever is willing to lose his life will save it. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, God, like it's unbearable being back here on earth. Like you have to show me how to get back with you, and I will do whatever is required. If you tell me to chop off my limbs, I will do it if that means that I can be back feeling your love again, because I can't live without it. I truly cannot live without it. And I got to that point, and then things started to unfold bit by bit by bit. People would come into my life who I didn't realize were helping me along the way, different experiences. And then you look back like a few months later or a few years later, and then you're like, oh wow, like look at all that happened. And now I'm here. And it feels amazing, and I wish everybody could feel this, because when you do get back in touch with God's love and you can feel it within you, life really is like kind of on easy street. Maybe not externally. I'm not rich. I don't have, I work a really rough physical job and with really rough guys. And, I'm still an average Joe on externally, but internally, I've got God's love. I don't need anything else. I'm complete. I'm good now. I'm
And
saved.
if rich people have a hard time getting to heaven, we don't want to be rich,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't mind
right?
being rich still.
I mean, if it
But
makes us more full of ego and hard-hearted and selfish, and we don't want those things really. I mean, it
well,
sounds
yeah,
nice,
exactly.
but ultimately, I noticed too, it seemed like a surrender and a trust in God when you're at the top of the tower and you're like, I'm afraid I'll die. And God's like, yes. And you're like, what? And then you trusted God. Okay. If he says that, then you trusted that. And I've noticed that a lot at NDEs. People get to a point where they're like, God is saying something like, okay, God, whatever you say. And it's like giving
Mhm.
over our life. And I think that gets rewarded,
Mm,
because it seems like that's the moment people get sent back when they've like
yeah.
surrendered and say it's up to you, and then it's like, I think I'm sending this one back. I think this will be a good soldier, or they'll share this message or something. Like God knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the death of the ego. And because I was identified with the ego, it was death. Like, it's not like God lied to me. It's just looking at it from a different perspective. Um, and it's the best thing that can happen. Just like, with NDEs, the best thing we learn the best thing that can happen to us on earth is really it's when we die and go back home. I mean, really, that's the best thing that can happen. And the best thing that can happen while you're on earth is the death of the ego. But it's brutal when it happens. It's usually not easy.
I know.
The Yeah, but when you get past that and you trust the process and you let it wipe away the trauma and the damage of everything we can experience here, it can help us to shed the ego layers bit by bit. And the more we shed, the only thing that dies is what's false. The only thing that remains is what's true. And so it's like, hey, if it hurts, let it hurt, let it burn, you know? And I think that's part of it. It's just like trusting that like all of this is happening for a good reason, even though it does not make sense to the human mind and to the ego. To trust the process, to trust what's happening. And we're all inching closer and closer step by step, or we're learning what's not getting us closer, you know. And so it's a beautiful experience we're having here on Earth, as difficult as it is. Um, Once the process is complete, and I don't know if I should say complete, I'm still here, so obviously it's not complete, but um, when you can get back in touch with God, that's really like the prodigal son returning home. And you feel that love and that peace, and you can experience it right now just by choosing to be loving to others, asking God to help become an outlet for God's love and really to just be open with it. And you feel God's love as it flows through you to others, you know. And this is the only way I can bear the only way I can deal with being here is by living like that. And I know a lot of other people need to hear this message too, and I want to be able to help them just like I was helped.
Yeah. It took me decades to finally realize one day that people that I felt hurt me the most, that I couldn't get over, it's like, wait a minute, they didn't take an arm or a leg. They didn't take my life. They took my pride. And so all they took was my pride. And
Mm,
so that's something that within me I can find again. Your self-respect, your dignity, your worth, that you're not worthless, and those kind of things. Because some people can just, it feels like they took something from you. They took this, right? And you realize that you can fix that. That was ego. That was your pride. And yeah, it wasn't right and it was wrong, but that is something that is invisible.
mm. Yeah, and
It's like I say, it's not a leg or arm. They didn't burn down my house. They didn't kill me.
mm,
This is something that I can recoup.
yeah. Well, it's illusionary as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's all such an illusion of these things that we think we lose, but a lot of the time when we're hurting and we're in pain, that's when we can really get in touch with what is real within us energetically. And we can sort of call out and connect to God And there's like a transformation process that happens with that when we use it the right way. I've heard one person, I think it was a Hindu woman, and she was saying something like, "I appreciate when God lets me suffer because that's when I feel closest with God." You know, and I was like, "Wow, that's like such an amazing way to look at it." Because yeah, it's like we were saying about the rich people on Easy Street, they've got no reason to call out to a higher power, you know. But when we
Yeah.
suffer, we can use that. We can transmute that into using that to connect and get closer to God. The real God is the only real medicine. God is the only real healing. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think when we get really angry, we're allowed to tell God off. Like some people think, oh, that's awful. That's like, no, I think God can handle it. I think he's big enough that if we tell him off exactly how we feel, then we can get it off our chest and, mend like a relationship. Like you get angry and then you make up and get over it. Because sometimes things happen. You're just like, why did this happen to me? Really, you're going to do this to me? We automatically blame God. And um, I don't know. I've got him a couple times in my life. And I've ripped
Mm,
him. Even in my second NDE, I was screaming at him. I never thought I would do something like that. You don't think you're going to
mm,
go to heaven and tell God off, but that's exactly what I was doing. I calmed
mm.
down and then I seen things differently, But yeah, anger is
Yeah,
real.
well,
It's an emotion.
yeah. Most of 2022, well, I'd say at least half of 2022, I was yelling at God and like really letting it rip, just like you said. And part of me, because I had a religious upbringing growing up, that would have meant I would have got struck down, But but after my experience, and I sort of feel this connection with God, and I know God is just listening perfectly calm and is appreciating the honesty and really wants us to be honest with him emotionally, energetically. Like, this is how you feel? Okay, good. Like, it's all part of the process. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for being honest with me. What are we going to do? We're going to what? Like, turn our back on God and pretend we're not feeling how we're feeling as if God's not
Right.
going to know and
Right.
suppress it. Suppression doesn't work for nothing. Suppression just makes things worse. Let it out. Let it off your chest. When you let it off your chest, kind of like screaming into a pillow, it feels good. It feels better. You let it out. And then God can work with that energy and transmute it, transform it into something better. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear about your second NDE, Peggy. I don't know anything about your NDEs, but I'm gonna look you
I'll
up later.
send you
So
a video.
yeah, cool.
Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with, or do you have a
Uh,
website or anything people can contact
I've got
you?
yeah, I've got a YouTube channel. It's in its early days, but there's a handful of videos on there. I just share some of my insights and some of the things I'm learning along the way. So you can look it up. It's under Jacob King. The handle, if you go that use the handle Jacob King 369. Anybody wants to reach out, just ask some questions, or if you need support on your journey, I'm willing to help. Jacob King 479 at gmail.com. Don't ask me to read the future for you and weird things like that. Just it's purely
People
just to
do
help
that
you.
to me. It's like, heck if I know.
Yeah, yeah, I got a lot of weird ones. But hey, now look, if you got questions or something doesn't make sense to you, things like this, like I love to help. And yeah, check out the YouTube channel if you enjoy this. I don't know, I just want to help people on their own journey. I don't want to be like I'm not a leader or anything. I just want people to find God within themselves. And that's all I want to help with. So that's all
Okay.
I'm really qualified to. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right,
All
Peggy.
right. All right. Thank you.
No worries.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.